Commissioner Fielder, can you hear me? This is Patricia. Please unmute your microphone.
Yes, I can hear you, Patricia. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Time is now 9:30 a.m. Today's date is April 26, 2022. It's time and place for our regularly scheduled business meeting. The other commissioners would join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, commissioners. I would note that we have quorum this morning. Commissioners O'Donnell, Pinocci, myself, Vice President are here in the Bollinger Room, and Commissioner Fielder is participating via Zoom, so we do have quorum. This is now the time and place for public comment. Is there anyone in the room that would like to make public comment? Please come forward.
Good morning, President Brown, Commissioners. My name is Shannon Heim. I'm the Director of Regulatory Corporate Counsel at Northwestern Energy. And I am here regarding Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas. I did want to note for you, we very much appreciate your pipeline safety staff, Joel Tierney and John Torsky went on a field trip with us up to Sleepy Hollow. Myself, Noah Davis, who is our manager of the Lewistown district. He's our natural gas guy. And Lisa Perry went up and did a lot of work up in Winifred last week. And so we really appreciate the extra effort that the staff went to and wanted to make sure that that is on the public record. I believe that on the Zoom today and available for comment are Eric Silver, who is the receiver of Sleepy Hollow, and his counsel, Robert Barr from Kohler Fitzgerald. They're both in Ohio, so joining remotely. A little bit unusual procedure, but I am available for questions. I would request that the commission allow me to sit with staff when you take up this matter and answer questions then.
Is there any objection to from any commissioner to that? Okay, shouldn't be a problem. Mr. Silver or Mr. Barr, did you want to make comment at this time?
Yes, I hope everyone can hear me. My name is Robert Barr. I'm an attorney in Ohio. I represent Eric Silver. He's a court-appointed receiver. I just wanted to take about 2 minutes and provide the commission with a background of what's happened, and I thank the commission for its time. Sleepy Hollow is a wholly owned subsidiary of a company called Ozair Inc. Ozair Inc. is an Ohio corporation. Ozair was owned by a man named Richard Osborne in Ohio. Mr. Osborne had numerous businesses, including Ozair and Sleepy Hollow. He unfortunately had to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy case several years ago, and he actually died last summer. The Chapter 7 trustee appointed in his bankruptcy case was faced with all these entities which owned assets, including Sleepy Hollow and Ozair. And she chose to commence a dissolution proceeding in state court, which was the proper procedure, even though the individual was in bankruptcy. And the dissolution of Ozair was filed in an Ohio court last December. Eric Silver was appointed as receiver just after Christmas, late in December. And immediately, Mr. Silver commenced proceedings to try to liquidate, sell off, do whatever he can with the assets. This is in early July or early January of 2022. Since then, we've spoken with entities who are interested in taking over the pipeline operation of Sleepy Hollow, including Northwest Energy. We have 2 matters pending with Northwest. One in the short term is a short-term operating agreement so they can take over and operate the pipeline, try to ensure safety, try to ensure services to customers. We're in the final stages. We're almost at a signature page, but we have a couple of issues to resolve with that. And then longer term, hopefully within the next month or two, we will have an asset purchase in place with Northwest Energy. We're going through a diligence period under which we would actually convey the entire pipeline operation to Northwest Energy, and they would take over the whole thing. So that's my presentation. I just wanted to provide the commission background, and we thank the commission for its time, and we share the commission's concerns about the safety of the operation.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Mr. Silver, did you want to say anything?
Thank you. I think Mr. Barr covered everything that I would add, but certainly both of us are available for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silver. Additional comment? I think we'll wait, if you wouldn't mind, till we raise the matter. All right, seeing no additional comment. Announcement to change to the agenda. We do have one change this morning. We're going to postpone work session item number 2, which is 2020.09094, Commission Investigation of North Star. That will be postponed to a later date. All right, let's move to the action items. Will, approval of commission minutes for the week. Well, approval of the commission minutes for the week of April 11, 2022. Is there a motion?
Move we approve, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Is there a second? Commissioner Pinocci is seconded. Changes to the minutes as drafted. Seeing none, all those in favor of the Vice President's motion to approve the commission minutes for the week of April 11, 2022 as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, minutes are approved unanimously. Action item number 2, staff out-of-state travel. Now it's your turn, Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. Staff requests approval for Cassandra Scheuer to travel to Albuquerque, New Mexico, May 15th through the 21st to attend the New Mexico State University Center for Public Utilities Basics Regulatory Training Program. The expected cost of this out-of-state travel is approximately $3,600, which covers transportation, lodging, food, and registration fees. The Basics is a pretty well-respected regulatory training program for new rate analysts and should prepare Cassie for upcoming rate cases, and staff recommends approval, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to approve the out-of-state travel.
okay, is there a second? Vice President Johnson is seconded. Discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner O'Donnell's motion to approve the out-of-state travel signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, travel is approved unanimously. All right, let's move into our work session items. Work session item number 1 this morning is docket 2022.03.044 Northwestern Energy. Northwestern Energy's applications for interim approval of the 2022 Natural Gas Universal System Benefits, the USB. We're here for a commission decision on granting Northwest Energy's application for interim approval. Good morning, Ms. Gilbert.
Good morning, Mr. President and Commissioners. On March 31st, 2022, Northwestern Energy filed its annual application to adjust its natural gas USB rates. We are discussing an interim rate today. Northwestern is requesting a USB adjustment of approximately $3.8 million to recover the costs of their 2020 budget, minus the costs, minus the overcollections from the previous 2 program years. The resulting increase would be about 15 cents a month for a typical residential customer using 100 therms a month. The interim rate would be effective May 1st. Staff recommends approval of the interim. Thank you.
All right, I will move to grant Northwestern Energy's request for interim approval. Is there a second? Vice President Johnson is seconded. Discussion, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, in reading this over, I see 2 things that puzzle me a bit. One is that they had an overcollection last year of nearly $200,000. And there was the same thing for the previous year, but they're asking for a very slight increase this year. I didn't see any justification on Northwestern's part as why they hit upon this particular amount on there.
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, so the USB rate is set through the previous year's natural gas annual revenues, and it is by statute 100 or 1.12% of that revenue, with 0.42 of that going to low income. So Northwestern is tied to those rules and because if the revenues are increasing, it's based upon the previous years. So it has to be 1.112 of that. So with annual revenues increasing, it would make sense that the USB rate would increase as well, simply because it's based on those revenues, which are driven by loads and weather and that kind of thing.
Mr.
Follow up.
Chairman. Thank you. Well, I did some math on there, and I'm not an economist or a rate analyst, but it didn't make any sense to me as when I took the 222,315,544, multiplied by 1.12, I came up with $1 million less than the 38108,052 that's requested. So the 1.12% is the minimum. And as I recall in previous years when we've discussed this, that the rate that the commission allows is significantly higher than the statutory minimum. But I just wondered how they came up with this particular figure, even because they've overcollected the last 2 years.
Right. So, Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, I think the term overcollection is a little bit of a misnomer because it's based on that percentage. So an overcollection is when they aren't using all of the funds that were set through the rate, and an undercollection is when the budget ends up being more than what the rate is designed for. This is an interim rate, so as staff continues to dig into this application, we can address your questions and address that in the final order if you would like.
Yes, so as my understanding of an overcollection is that money was collected and they didn't spend $200,000 of it. So if they didn't spend 200,000 and 175 the year before, I didn't see any justification for why this amount of budget. There was no rationale for increasing. It's only 15 cents a month, as you say, for a customer using 100 therms. But why any increase at all? I don't usually, we go through big rate cases. This is not a big rate case, but in terms of every increase has to be justified. I don't see any justification for this or how the 3.8 million, what relationship that has to the 222 million. I don't, you mentioned the 1.1, that's a minimum. I didn't do the math to figure out what percentage that is, but it is significantly more than the 1.12. So I just don't understand why there's an increase. It's not going to break anybody's budget, but seriously, I mean this. And Commissioner Lake, my first 4 years here, was very eloquent in pointing out numerous times, and I have regarded this as very, very important also. Basically, the little old lady on a very, very fixed income who worries about how long she keeps the light on and how warm she keeps her house. So even 15%, 15 cents is not a lot, but it's something, and it needs to be justified. So that's my concern, Mr. Chairman.
Stover, did you want to address that?
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, so from my recollection of the application, I think Northwestern is fairly tied to those percentages. I know in a previous investigative docket on the USB program, that rate was designed to fully fund these programs so that enough would be set aside for the low income part of it, but still be able to fund the program in its entirety. So that's where that 1.112 comes from. I can certainly double check those numbers for you and get back to you and make sure everything works out. But since today is just an interim rate, we have time to dig into this and make sure all your concerns are addressed before we issue any decision on this.
Thank you.
Vice President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Gilbert, maybe I'm confused, but does this current number not reflect both the 1.12 collection and the collection of the recovery of the under collection from the previous program year?
Mr. President and Mr. Vice President, yes, I believe that the over collections from the previous year are baked into all of
Is
this.
in this total, which would explain a number being higher than just the straight 1.12. If there was not an over collection to be, or I'm sorry, under collection to be made right, then the number simply would have been 1.12 times the gas revenues.
Right. The previous 2 years, program years numbers are baked into all of this. So it's several years of a true up. It's a tracker docket. So that's how that works.
Thank you, Mr. President.
O'Donnell.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in previous discussions where this has come up is that the 1.12 is a minimum, but it's a long-standing tradition, as I understand it, of the submission to greatly exceed that. And it seems to me that when I did the math and came up with 2 million something, that basically the factor that the commission is using is like 2.4 as opposed to 1.12. And that's just, for some reason, historically, that was put in there. I don't know if it was arbitrary in years past or if there was some particular funding that Northwestern wanted to do. And so it was raised at that point and then it just stayed that way. I don't know what the thing is, but the 1.2 I think is irrelevant to what we're looking at. It's just the minimum, and this commission has always far exceeded that, even to the point of 50% higher. That's my understanding, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would it cause any harm to defer this and allow Commissioner O'Donnell to discuss his questions with staff and make sure that they understand each other before we vote on this?
Ms. Gobert.
Mr. President, Commissioner Fielder, in the application, Northwestern is asking for this rate to go into effect on May 1st. And I believe their program budget is based on it going into effect on May 1st. So I think it may cause some issues there.
Mr. Fielder.
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to have us be certain. And it sounds like the commissioner that's really examined this and done the math on it is not getting a satisfactory answer in terms of understanding exactly where those numbers are coming from. I'd like to hear from Commissioner O'Donnell again, if the explanation today has cleared anything up for you, or do you feel that you need additional time?
You defer, Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. Yes and no. Being that the May 1st deadline, I'm fully prepared to vote no on this. But as Ms. Gobert points out, this is an interim rate, and that Northwestern is already geared up to move in this direction. So I appreciate your observations, Commissioner Fielder, and sensitivity to my concerns. But I will vote to support this today. But I've expressed my concerns that will come up when we reach a permanent rate on this thing. And I would assume that since the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Northwestern is here, that they understand my concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Additional discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Fielder.
just given the nature of this being an interim order, I'm okay with approving it today. But had it been a final order, I think we would need a lot more clarification before being asked to vote on it. So more time, we need to spend more time with staff ahead of these things.
Additional discussion. So in support of my motion, I'm going to ask you some procedural background on this, Ms. Gobert. It's my understanding that we received petitions from the Montana Consumer Council and Energy Share, and they were granted intervention in this matter. Is that correct?
So, Mr. President, the way this docket kind of worked out kind of awkwardly this year, I was assigned to it about mid-April, and with, excuse me, the canceled work session last week, they sort of led to not being able to do this particular work session in a more timely fashion so that we could have had the intervention granting before the order will go out. So on Thursday, I believe, is the deadline for that, and we will grant intervention to those two parties because they typically do ask for that every year in this docket, and then we can post the interim order on Friday, and that would clear up the sort of wonky procedural that is clear in that draft order, if that makes sense. I know it worked out really awkwardly this year with timing and workloads and everything going on this month.
All right. Well, I would just reiterate what was made clear today, that this isn't, if we approve this today, it is an interim order, and it is not a final endorsement or approval of any issues, calculations, or methodologies.
That is correct, Mr. President. The commission still has its own discretion to make any decision upon further consideration of this docket.
Okay, well, I think given the looming May 1st deadline, if you will, that we should approve the interim rate. Additional discussion? All right, all those in favor of my motion to approve the interim rate in order, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. As a reminder, work session item number 2 has been deferred or postponed. So we'll move to work session item number 3. This is commission initiated. This is Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas, Sleepy Hollow for short. We're here to summarize PSC staff inspection work and attempted compliance actions concerning Sleepy Hollow during 2020 and 2021, and to review Sleepy Hollow's past and current operations and current business conditions, as well as to describe current efforts to ensure all stakeholders are prioritizing pipeline safety concerns. And I'll look to you first, Mr. Reed.
Mr. President, I think that all the commission has received the memo that that Mr. Tierney, Mr. Torsky, and I drafted on April 15th. Fundamentally, Mr. President, members of the commission, this matter has been coming to a head for some time. We're very appreciative of the work that both Ms. Heim and the receiver and his counsel have done to sort of establish a safety net or a continuity plan for Sleepy Hollow. The fact remains that the way that Sleepy Hollow is currently being managed is untenable. And while there is a very large chance, I wouldn't like to speculate on the probabilities, but it's all but certain that Northwestern will be able to take on the safe operation of Sleepy Hollow. There is a non-zero chance that this will not happen. And so what staff would very much like is for the commission to take the necessary steps to have, as it were, a plan B, which is to require to have an ultimatum for Sleepy Hollow that would set a date certain by which it would have to show some evidence that it is in fact operating its pipeline system with insurance up to the standards that are set by federal and state law, and so forth, as are set out in the staff recommendations at the end of the memorandum. That having been said, I think the memo largely speaks for itself. I think members of the commission are aware to a greater or lesser degree of the history of Sleepy Hollow. And so I and staff, as well as Mr. Silver and Ms. Heim, sit today prepared to respond to whatever questions, comments, or concerns you may have. Thank you.
Mr. Tierney, do you want to add anything at this point? Mr. Torsky? Sign. All right. Questions from commissioners? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. The thing that really jumped out to me is that not only the report pointed out, do we not have the reports of the required maintenance and inspection of the gas system, but we all know about the danger that natural gas system distribution system can entail. So we don't know if the system was inspected and maintained. We just don't have any records on that. What concerns me is that the one remaining employee who has not been paid for a long period of time and who may have left at any time, that would have had nobody on site. So maintenance and inspection would have been impossible. I find this to be incredibly alarming that a system like that would have had no monitoring whatever. And I cannot understand why a bankruptcy court would not make certain that entities within that it has purview over would not continue to be maintained, especially in light of federal law. Because the depreciation or the liabilities of that entity would far outweigh any financial attributes it would have during bankruptcy. It just concerns me greatly. It was discussed about levying a fine to one of the parties or to the bankruptcy or whomever like that. I don't know that would solve anything. I don't know what the assets of the whole entity are, whether or not a fine would be a punitive thing, it would be destructive. If there's very little money to go around, imposing a fine would only make things much, much worse from a safety point of view. I'm really concerned about the safety in this thing, and it is just astoundingly alarming to me that the bankruptcy proceedings would have allowed this to happen. I'd like some comment on that.
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, I can say that Mr. Conroy is no longer an employee of Sleepy Hollow. I think that in fairness, there have been a lot of concerns that staff has had. I don't think whether it's fair to attribute the lapses to the trustee or to the receiver or to Mr. Conroy are less concerning to staff at this time than simply trying to make sure that we have a course that's clear that either that has us one way or another with Sleepy Hollow's operations in the hands of someone who's competent to do so. And ideally, that will be Northwestern as far as the available players who could take that on. If not, staff would encourage the commission to take whatever steps it feels are necessary in order to ensure that Sleepy Hollow is either operating safely or not operating at all.
That doesn't explain to me that there has to be some type of an accountability for the fact that the system was, for all that we know, poorly maintained and inspected, which increases the danger on that thing. And I'm being an attorney. I'm just flabbergasted that the bankruptcy proceeding would allow entities within that to be placed in a situation like this, and the public. If there was an accident and it was not maintained, the lawsuits would blow up any type of bankruptcy dispositions on the whole thing. I find that to be absolutely amazing to me. An entity only has a value as an asset if it's operating properly. If it's not operating at all, then it has no value. Part of the bankruptcy proceeding would be to maintain that value and to encourage that. So I just find this to be amazing. And I just think that the bankruptcy proceeding, the receiver, somebody, I'm not pointing any fingers, somebody needs to take accountability for this thing. And it seems to me that the purpose of fines needs to be, is a reasonable process, and some fines need to be assessed. Somebody did grievous wrong and error on the whole thing, sir.
Vice
Go.
President Johnson.
Thank you.
Hold on. Yes, you may. Ms. Heim.
Thank you, President Brown, Commissioner O'Donnell. I think the time for blame is past. I think a postmortem on the situation will be warranted for the commission. But to be fair, this is an extraordinary situation that, in my experience and in talking to Mr. Tierney and Mr. Torsky, it is unprecedented. And so I would strongly discourage the commission from assessing fines because there's no one left to fine. There's no one really left to be accountable that was Sleepy Hollow. I mean, you have the people in front of you who are trying to remedy the situation, which are the receiver and his counsel, the commission staff, and Northwestern. But there's no one left to pay a fine, and there's no money to be had. Any money that may be generated from collecting back owed amounts will go to actually funding the gas and the maintenance of the system. And so I would strongly discourage you from doing that. That said, Northwestern does strongly support the commission's action today. This really does need to go down two parallel paths because we're not there yet. I can't sit in front of you and promise that we will acquire these assets because we haven't completed our due diligence. We haven't signed an asset purchase agreement. So having parallel paths where the commission can take the action and have papered their file to take the action to shut down the system if and when that is the last option has to be done. It has to be done. And so I do think there's value to that today.
Follow up, please.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
So you say Mr. Conroy is no longer an employee. Is anybody watching the system? Is Engineer Torsky, is he the person who is monitoring the system at this point? Is the only knowledgeable professional person?
Well, I would say that right now, because the system is in receivership, they have no paid employees. Mr. Conroy is still on the ground, and we spent the day last week, we spent a full day with him going through the system. Northwestern would not even take over a limited operating role if we thought the system was unsafe. We would be here hand in hand with the commission urging you to shut it down immediately. The fact of the matter is, it has not been well documented. The maintenance that's been done, there are not great records. But at the same time, we believe the maintenance has in fact been done. I do not believe that there is an urgent today, you have to shut off the system need, or I would articulate that. That said, we do urgently need the commission's authority to take over this limited operating role to support the receiver and make sure that the system continues to operate in a safe manner. A natural gas system needs an operator. That is just the fact of the matter. And so we are, as Mr. Barr indicated in his initial comments, we are very close to being able to execute our operating agreement. It's a limited operating agreement. We're providing emergency services. We will be doing a meter read to generate a little bit of revenue on the past due bills for the receiver. These folks would not be billed under a Northwestern tariff. They are not Northwestern customers until we acquire the assets. But that there needs to be some revenue generated to meet the needs of the system. So that's where we're at. Of course, I know your question was rhetorical, and I'll let Mr. Torsky speak for himself, but of course, no commission staff would ever legally be permitted to be the operator of the system.
Mr. Barr, you have your hand raised.
I believe he needs to unmute himself.
All right, this is Robert Barr again.
Go ahead, Mr. Barr.
Thank you. As soon as Mr. Silver was appointed as receiver, and this was late December, early January, he did take action to communicate with whatever remaining employees there were. And he, in fact, inherited what was in existence in late December. And initially, his actions were to try to find out who could take over the pipeline and who could ensure the safety, and who could, in fact, take over the overall operations. And that's what he's done. And that's the substance of what we've entered into with Northwestern Energy. And we'll try to work to continue that and to complete the transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Vice President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Heim, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The real focus here should be forward-looking to get this thing online in a way that's safe and satisfactory to all the parties, and I appreciate that observation. I just want to make sure that we're abundantly clear in the record that Northwestern, in fact, would be supportive of this commission issuing this order to show cause as part of as we say, Plan B going forward. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, President Brown, Vice President Johnson, we do support that. And honestly, in my personal role as being a regulatory lawyer for more than 20 years, I don't think you have a choice but to take that path so that you've got something to fall back on and that you've taken all of the procedural steps in order to shut down the system. And I honestly think that the receiver is also supportive of that. You know, we all hope and intend to keep this system operational. To shut it down, once you shut down a natural gas system, it's pretty much shut down forever. It's very risky and unsafe to put gas back through the system. And so to shut it down would waste the asset that is in the ground, which it seems to be a crying shame, but it also would put about 150, 180 homes and businesses and educational facilities out of their natural gas. And they use that gas to heat their homes, heat their water, and run their appliances. And so it absolutely is a last resort. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you've taken all the steps that if it comes to that, you can do it.
Thank you, Ms. Heim. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Commissioner Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to, I want to show my appreciation for the staff for really digging into this and bring it to our attention in the way that they did and the work they've been doing to try to resolve the problem, and also to the parties that seem to be cooperating with this. Also, Ms. Heim just confirmed to me that Northwestern agrees with the staff recommendations here, and I just wanted to confirm that also Mr. Barr and or Mr. Silver do agree that these are doable and that what we're asking here is not going to inhibit the ability of the parties to resolve this problem.
Is that directed at Mr. Barr?
We can start with Mr. Barr if he'd be willing to answer that. He would have to unmute himself.
Hi, this is Robert Barr again. Thank you. I think Ms. Heim is correct that if we're unable to complete the transaction, we would essentially shut down the system. And that's what Mr. Silver would prefer doing, primarily for the safety reasons. And I hope that answers the question.
Well, no, it doesn't. My question is regarding, have you seen the staff recommendation for the steps that staff is recommending the commission order on this?
I received an email outlining certain factors, yes, but
Okay. Let me, Mr. Chairman, let me defer to Mr. Reed, our chief legal counsel, who I assume had a large hand in writing the staff recommendation. Mr. Reed, are you comfortable that this will help to resolve the problem and that we're not issuing some kind of order that's going to, interfere with actually resolving this as quickly as possible?
Mr. President, Commissioner Fielder, I think that's right. I think there are two operations that are working in parallel. One is Northwestern's taking over of the operation of this network, and the other is this sort of Plan B, or what to do when if that fails. And Mr. Barr, Mr. Silver, for your elucidation, the staff recommendation is that the commission issues Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas and the receiver in order to show cause regarding past deficiencies that would require Sleepy Hollow to account for delays in previous records requests, require Sleepy Hollow to produce full and complete accounting and reporting, as required under federal law and regulation, that those records be preserved and protected through the bankruptcy, that Sleepy Hollow or its operator clarify current operations and maintenance activities, that Sleepy Hollow account for any current or potential business deficiencies such as unpaid debts, insurance, inability to make payroll, or other liabilities, that Sleepy Hollow recognize that a business or operational deficiencies could negatively affect public safety, and that Sleepy Hollow detail current actions that are occurring to ensure the safe and continued service to customers. We're working under the assumption that Northwestern Energy is going to be assuming operation of the system in something realistically like 60 days. I think an optimistic estimate is 30 days, but Murphy's Law, I think, obtains in this situation as in all others. So I would assume that the order to show cause, or staff would recommend that the order to show cause be effective 30 days from this date. Does this respond to your concern, Commissioner Fielder?
Mr. President, Mr. Reed, yes, I think it makes it more clear to Mr. Barr and Mr. Silver. I'd like now to hear from Mr. Barr or Mr. Silver. It seems to me like most of these recommendations would be items that they would already be engaged in as part of their due diligence. But Mr. Barr or Mr. Silver, would you like to comment on the staff recommendations and whether you have any thoughts regarding this, whether this would impede your ability to work toward a smooth resolution as quickly as possible?
This is Robert Barr again. My only comment is we're actually governed by the Ohio court here, and we answer to that court. That being said, I've listened to all the items. I don't think the receiver can comply with all of the items. We'll continue to cooperate with the commission, with the conveyance, and a plan B being to shut down the system, but that's all I can comment on. I can't consent to a show cause order against the receiver. If the commission wishes to enter the show cause against the actual entity, we would obviously have no issue with that.
Time.
Thank you, President Brown, Commissioner Fielder. In my view, the purpose of the show cause order is not to actually get this list of documents, but to document what would be expected if they were going to continue to own and operate this system. I would expect that they actually would not do that, which would then give the commission the authority moving forward to shut down the system. That's the purpose. That's that path. I will tell you, so my hope is that we will execute our limited operating agreement with the receiver this week. Northwestern Energy would do that and file an emergency application with that agreement with the commission yet this week. And so I would hope on Tuesday at the next work session, the commission would take that up on an emergency basis. We are including an interim proposed order for your convenience and to expedite that. And so I think issuing the show cause order, it gives us, it gives you that path. But at the same time, if Northwestern is able to step in on a limited basis and operate the system, be an emergency backup, make sure that there is someone actually minding the shop, so to speak, that gives you some leeway with the timing of when to execute on a failure to show cause. And so that remains in your discretion. A lot of the items that are articulated, some of the items articulated in the list on a going forward basis are things that we would expect, Northwestern Energy would expect as part of the due diligence process, and that we either have some of that now or will have it for your review on a going forward basis. But I would hope, the timeline that I see for this is that Northwestern would be in a position to take immediate operating authority, which is in everyone's best interests, while we work through these due diligence issues with the receiver and his counsel. and come to a final asset purchase agreement. I would really like that to happen in 60 days or less, that asset purchase agreement. The operating agreement that we're going to put in front of you has a 60-day timeframe just to keep this thing going. The receiver needs this resolved. The people of Winifred and the surrounding communities need it resolved. And frankly, so does the commission and Northwestern.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. I don't have any further questions, just a comment, and that would be that I appreciate
Frozen in time. Mr. President.
Well, hold on, Commissioner O'Donnell. I will circle back to Commissioner Fielder when she gains technology access again. Mr. Reed, did you want to address anything further on that?
The only thing I would like to say, Mr. President, is that really just to double underline the notion that this order to show cause is a drop dead date for this commission to simply look at the parties and say, you absolutely have to resolve this matter by a date certain, because we haven't had that before. And that's one of the reasons this has been so prolonged, I would say.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Thank you. I also wanted to add that I really appreciate Northwestern stepping up and taking responsibility for the ongoing operation of the system. I feel much more secure that competent people are reviewing this, and there was no requirement for Northwestern to do this, purely voluntary, and I appreciate it very, very much. But I did have some questions. Apparently, the information we have is that none of the people who these 180 residences and businesses have received a bill since December. Also, none of the two people, remaining employees were paid, and money came from out of pocket for gas and other type of things. I'm wondering whose pocket did that come out of? And is there any negotiations to make whole all these people who didn't get paid, or will all of those customers, will they have to come up with the payments on this? How does this work out?
President Brown, Commissioner O'Donnell. So two things. I think I will do my best to answer your questions, and anything that I get wrong, Mr. Barr, Mr. Silver can obviously correct me. But I would also want, part of Northwestern's suggestion in this docket is also a little bit extraordinary. We're going to suggest, instead of pre-filed testimony that would normally come into a docket like this, that we do a live hearing. And I think a lot of these questions are appropriate for that live hearing. But my understanding, for what it's worth, is that the last bills were sent in December 2021. That's when the business manager was last employed. She actually came and spent time with us also last week and went through all of the records. I have the last meter reads that were done, the actual meter reads. And so we will be able, Northwestern as a contractor of the receiver, will be able to do a meter read and issue a bill. Collection of those is up to the receiver. I would hope, after speaking to people in town, I think most people want to pay something and feel really deeply uncomfortable that they haven't been billed. And so we'll see what happens on a going backwards basis. I think I would expect in this interim operating period, we are more likely to get payment, for example, for the April bill, if, whatever that interim is between the first meter read that Northwestern can do on behalf of the receiver and the second meter read. And all that money, that is Sleepy Hollow money. That's not Northwestern money. Although, to be fair, we would expect there is a substantial back bill owed to Northwestern for the actual gas that has flowed through the system. My understanding is, all of the payments that are made have to be done within the parameters allowed the receiver. And the court issued very specific parameters, and I've provided that order to the commission staff of what and when they can pay, but they can only pay what they have. So my understanding is that they have made payments to the business manager, and she is considered whole. And they're working on getting Mr. Conroy some portion of what he's paid and some amount of his out-of-pocket paid. But it's a complicated matter. All issues in bankruptcy and receivership are complicated legal matters. And with all due respect, will not be a matter in front of this commission.
Mr. Silver has his hand up. Mr. Silver, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you. Members of the commission, I wanted to comment on just a narrow band of the question that was just raised. Most of the questions from our perspective have been responded to by Mr. Barr. As far as compensation to the employees, I can tell you that we take that matter very seriously, as we do all the matters related to this receivership. Our priorities are safety, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then when you get to 6, it's taking care of, to the best we can, the employees who have provided services to Sleepy Hollow, most of which occurred prior to our participation, our appointment, our having any involvement in this matter. So to address the record of the 2 employees, the business manager, Ms. Southworth, has been paid in full. And we have also said to Mr. Conroy that it is our intent to try to make him whole. I don't know that we're going to be able to, but it is our intent to do that. We have, from the beginning, impressed upon them that the only money that's available is money that is collected from the customers. And so we've encouraged them to first and foremost do work that covers the priority of safety. And then after that, the goal is to be able to bill customers, collect revenue, and get these 2 employees paid.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. So that is helpful. When Mr. Conroy pointed out that vehicle payments, 10 vehicle payments were made, $600 a month, totaling $6,000. Fuel paid out of pocket, $2,302. I'm going, if that was his pocket, I certainly wouldn't want to be a party to him being given 50 cents on the dollar for money that he was under no compulsion. As he indicated in his testimony, he could have walked away at any time. He was incredibly frustrated. And I just want to make one more point, and that is that it seems to me that this receivership process, and Mr. Barr points out that there's, I hadn't thought about this, what time they came into this situation, but it is unacceptable negligence, both from the safety point of view and treating these employees, and the fact that we have, this commission has asked for reports and has not gotten them. The amount of professional and reasonable cooperation has been, to me, totally absent. And it would seem to me that a fine is exactly in order as long as that fine does not accrue to the assets of Sleepy Hollow or of Northwestern. I don't know if a fine can be against the trustee process, the bankruptcy proceeding, but I wouldn't want it to be harmful to Northwestern. That would be totally unfair, nor to the assets of Sleepy Hollow, which has been pointed out may not be sufficient to meet all these needs here. But I think that this should not just be said, well, it's past now. Let's just go on from here. I realize this is an extraordinary situation, but it was extraordinary malfeasance, I think, done here, and it needs to be addressed officially, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Fielder, you cut off when you were about to make your observation. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to continue your thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, the call dropped momentarily. So I feel satisfied with the staff recommendations at this point in this time, and that the parties should continue to work in good faith to attempt to resolve this. And I'd like the commission to be part of working in good faith with them to help get this resolved. First and foremost, to ensure that, you know, this plant can continue to serve the customers in that area safely. And then, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to looking back along the lines Commissioner O'Donnell is suggesting, if there were someplace along the line where there was a guilty party that could be found. I understand that the owner of the company has died, so I'm not sure that that's really possible to go back and, you know, to find somebody who was responsible for getting it to this state. But I agree with Commissioner O'Donnell. I certainly wouldn't want to find any of the parties that are working in good faith to get this resolved as quickly as possible. And I support those efforts, and I will concur with that staff recommendation today on that basis.
Thank you, Commissioner Fielder. Additional discussion or questions?
Just a question.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
So if we acquiesce to these suggestions today in the staff memo, does that preclude any future activity that we might have having to do with any fines or any other regulatory? You're shaking your head. I'm not sure what that means. I can't hear it shake the rocks from here.
Mr. President, Commissioner O'Donnell, that was approving the staff recommendation would be a condition precedent. So once we would have to have an order to show cause, and then have the parties in question, which would be Sleepy Hollow, or to whatever extent that entity still exists, come before this commission and show cause that they should not be penalized for whatever bad acts they had committed. I would note for the record that whatever difficulty staff may have had in getting the bankruptcy trustee with whom we had previous communication to be cooperative in moving this towards a swift and sure resolution is not at all reflected by the performance of Mr. Silver or Mr. Barr, who have been extremely helpful. And it has been, I mean, it's been in their interest to bring this to a resolution. So with that observation, does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, indeed it does. Thank you, Mr. President.
Commissioner Panochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been pretty involved with this for over a month and in very close contact with my constituents in my district. If we have to shut the system down, people will have to spend a lot of money in the millions of dollars to go to propane. And they're hoping that they can remain in natural gas service. If Northwestern isn't able to take this over, there is no one left to do it. We'll have to shut the system down, and it'll cost the residents millions of dollars. Not only that, they'll have a higher rate in propane, and it'll be much more inconvenient because you'll have to have tanks filled, tanks brought in. People who try to modify their heating system or their stove or their hot water heater to propane is getting more difficult. The companies in that line of business are refusing to do that, which could require people to put in propane furnaces, propane stoves, propane hot water heaters. I'm asking this commission, the staff and Northwestern to move as quickly as possible to give Northwest Energy the approval to take this over. I'm hoping it's not 60 days or 30 days. I have hope that it can be in 2 weeks. It was unlikely to shut it down in the winter time because of safety concerns, but now winter is over. We don't have any company to look to besides Northwestern. So I'm asking everyone here, all three parties, please move as quickly as possible. And that's what I'm asking, Mr. President. Thank you.
Discussion or questions? Couple questions myself. I think it's important for the public who's listening today to understand, as I understand from talking to staff, that the concern has been over time the company's failure to maintain the appropriate records, correct? But the company, thanks to Mr. Conroy, primarily has been operating, correct, without interruption, correct? You can give me a verbal on that.
Yes, Mr. President, that's my understanding.
And it's my understanding Mr. Conroy is still continuing to operate as of today, correct?
That is my understanding, although it's in a gray legal area since he is not technically an employee of Sleepy Hollow any longer.
Okay. Well, based on those questions and representations, let me make a comment. I echo Commissioner Pinocchi's comments. To the extent that he's asserting that it's in the public interest for us to move expeditiously moving forward. And I would agree with my colleagues that I'm not really interested in looking backwards or being punitive. What I'm interested in is getting a solution to this matter because, as I stated, is in the public interest for this system to continue to operate. Obviously, there's hundreds of people that are affected by this, and we want to ensure their safety, but also their continuing service. Based on that, I do not see a date certain in the staff recommendation by which Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas and its receiver would have to respond to the show cause. I've heard 30 days and 60 days bandied about. Mr. Reed, do you want to address that?
Mr. President, yes, the reason one was not included in this was that, frankly, the situation was in some flux when this memorandum was written. I think that a date of 30 days would be appropriate for this commission to insert into this order of show cause.
Okay, and then this time, just so I understand, Northwestern Energy's plan for proceeding. So as I understand it, the company intends to file with the commission an application for authority to temporarily operate the system, correct?
It will be an application for emergency authority to operate and to acquire. So it'll be kind of a two-step process. So the urgency is that we have commission approval to operate. It's a little unusual. We don't operate systems we don't own generally. And so we need commission approval to do that. And then we'll also ask for expedited consideration for us to acquire the assets. And so that would, I think, necessitate the live hearing I had referenced earlier.
Okay, I appreciate that plan for moving forward. I agree with you that at some point we'll have to provide process for MCC and others to weigh in this, but I would echo Commissioner Pinocchi's comment that the sooner that you get that application, if you will, filed, the better. I will certainly set a special meeting of the commission to act on that so that we have continuity in operation of the system. With that being said, I will move to have the commission issue a show cause order to Sleepy Hollow Oil and Gas and its receiver Eric Silver under the bullet pointed using or setting forth the bullet pointed recommendations of staff. I would then add the 30-day time period for responding. Is there a second for that motion? Commissioner Pinochi has seconded. Discussion on my motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of my motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. Let me commend you, Mr. Barr and Mr. Silver, for participating today. I very much appreciate your professionalism in appearing and having this conversation with us. And I appreciate your continued cooperation in resolving this matter in a manner that is to the benefit of all. All right, that being said, some housekeeping matters. 2 o'clock today, we'll have a strategic planning meeting for the commission where we'll discuss some updates on our internal operating and internal operations discussion. Tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, we will be having a hearing in the matter of the petition of Caithness Beaver Creek LLC to set terms and conditions for qualifying small power production facilities. Shannon, for your awareness and for the awareness of the public, the commission did meet this morning and we're not going to have a business meeting next Tuesday. So we'll just look for your Northwestern Energy's application and then we'll just set a special meeting, I presume. So the next commission business meeting will be Tuesday, May 10th, unless we decide otherwise. Seeing no other matters to come before us, the time is now 10:39 a.m. I will adjourn today's business meeting.